The sun has just begun its climb over the horizon, casting soft golden rays through the towering trees of an ancient forest. The woods are alive, yet there is a profound stillness that seems to hover between each gust of wind. The air is fresh and crisp, filled with the earthy scent of pine and damp soil, a fragrance that seems to belong to the very soul of the earth itself. Leaves rustle gently, as if whispering secrets to those who are willing to listen. The only sounds are the occasional calls of birds from high in the trees and the soft crackling of twigs underfoot. But despite the peaceful aura, there is something else, something unspoken, that lingers in the cool, misty air. It's the feeling that the wilderness is alive, that it's holding its breath, waiting. And though the forest seems tranquil, it's also a place where untold stories unfold every day, where danger and beauty exist side by side. The dense trees stand tall, their trunks thick with age, casting long shadows over the forest floor. It's here, in this untouched world, that everything can change in an instant. You've heard of the wild, haven't you? The untamed beauty of nature, where everything thrives in harmony, but where there's always a sense of danger lurking just beyond the tree line. Imagine standing in the heart of it all. Can you feel the pulse of nature, every leaf trembling in the wind? In this place, everything is connected, and in a single moment, everything can change. Meet Jack, a seasoned hiker, drawn to the wilderness like a moth to a flame. He's the kind of person who's always sought adventure, who finds peace in the vastness of nature and the silence that only the wild can offer. For Jack, the forest is his sanctuary, a place where he feels most alive. He's wandered many trails, climbed mountains, and explored forests far and wide. But today, something feels different. Our story begins with one person, a hiker who thought they had seen it all. Jack had ventured into these woods countless times, believing he knew every turn, every shadow. But deep in the woods, something extraordinary was waiting to unfold. A story that would forever change his understanding of the wild. Jack had wandered deep into the heart of the forest, feeling the soft earth beneath his boots and the fresh air filling his lungs. The trail was long, but the serenity of the woods was a welcome peace after weeks of city life. There was something calming about the way the trees whispered in the wind, their leaves dancing in the cool breeze. The birds called out from the branches high above, and the only other sound was the crunch of his footsteps against the forest floor. As Jack moved forward, the trees seemed to grow thicker, their trunks growing larger and older, standing close together like silent guardians of the woods. The quiet wrapped around him like a blanket, and for a moment, everything felt perfect. His thoughts drifted, and he lost track of time, lost in the beauty of it all. But then something changed. The rustling sound that had been so familiar to him suddenly became more pronounced, more deliberate. Jack slowed his steps, his ears straining to catch the source. Suddenly, everything went still. The birds stopped singing. The wind seemed to stop blowing. It was as if the forest itself had paused to hold its breath. Jack froze in place, his heart pounding in his chest. He scanned the area around him, his eyes darting from tree to tree, trying to make sense of the sudden stillness. Then, in the distance, he saw a shadow moving between the trees. At first, it was just a shape, but as it stepped into a small clearing, Jack could make out its form. A massive bear, standing still, its eyes locked on him. For a moment, time stands still. The forest, once alive with sound, is now silent. The bear stands motionless, watching him with unblinking eyes. His heart races, the only sound in his ears, the pounding of his own blood. What happens when the wild comes face to face with the human? The bear did not move, but its presence was undeniable. It was huge, its fur thick and dark, its muscles rippling beneath its coat. But it didn't charge. Instead, it stood perfectly still, watching Jack with a calm, almost curious expression. The eyes of the bear, deep and knowing, seemed to look right through him, as if it were trying to figure him out. The creature was powerful, its size and strength impossible to ignore, but there was no aggression. The bear seemed cautious, sizing up the hiker with an air of curiosity. Jack stood frozen, unsure of what to do next. The bear's gaze was unwavering, as if it was waiting for Jack to make the first move. The tension in the air was thick, the forest holding its breath once again. Jack had seen wild animals in his time, but this was different. This was the wild, raw, and untamed, standing before him in all its glory. The hiker knew he should stay calm, but the primal instinct to run screamed in his mind. Imagine standing there, locked in a gaze with a creature so powerful, so majestic. The wild up close, waiting for your next move. The air feels heavy with the weight of this moment, and in that silence, everything is magnified. What would you do? Every instinct told Jack to slowly back away, to retreat and give the bear space. But he couldn't move. He was captivated by the creature's stillness, by the way it seemed to observe him without fear or hostility. The tension in the air grew, every second stretching out like an eternity. Then, without warning, the bear slowly turned its head, shifting its gaze toward the trees on the opposite side. It wasn't moving away, but it seemed to lose interest in Jack for a moment. Jack exhaled slowly, his heart still racing. He knew he had to stay still, not do anything sudden, but inside, his mind was running through 100 different possibilities. What was the bear thinking? Was it dangerous? Or was it just curious, like him, about this strange creature standing before it? It wasn't just the size of the bear that made this moment so intense. It was the unspoken connection between them, the way the animal seemed to study him, as though it was trying to understand who or what this human was. Jack's thoughts swirled. What should he do? Should he move or remain frozen? Would the bear see his movement as a threat? In the stillness of the forest, time seemed to slow, the only sound now the distant rustling of leaves. And then, just as quickly as it had appeared, the bear turned away, disappearing into the shadows of the trees. Jack stood there motionless, for what felt like forever, still trying to process what had just happened. The wild, in all its beauty and danger, had just shown itself to him in the most intimate way. Would he ever be the same after this? The bear's stillness lingered for a moment longer, before something surprising happened. Rather than charging forward or retreating into the safety of the trees, the creature began to move slowly, carefully, its massive paws making barely a sound on the soft forest floor. The hiker stood frozen, every muscle in his body tensed, but surprisingly, there was no panic. The forest, once filled with an electric charge of tension, now seemed to hold its breath in anticipation. The bear's movements were slow, deliberate, almost serene. It wasn't stalking, it wasn't fleeing, it was simply approaching. Its black nose sniffed the air as it drew closer to the hiker, its eyes never leaving the man, but not with hostility, rather with a quiet, curious intensity. Jack felt the ground beneath him shift, as if the entire forest was inching forward with each step the bear took. The only sounds now were the soft padding of the bear's paws and the distant chirps of the birds in the canopy above. It's not what the hiker expected. No growls, no chase, just the soft padding of paws against the earth. The bear, once a symbol of danger and raw power, was now a mysterious presence, approaching in silence. What was it thinking? Jack's heart raced, but there was no wild thrumming of fear, no overwhelming rush of terror. It was as though the hiker could sense that the bear wasn't moving with aggression, but with a strange purpose. His feet felt rooted to the ground, but he found himself unable to tear his eyes away from the creature before him. There was a rawness to the moment, something pure and unexplainable. A bear in the wild wasn't supposed to act like this. But here it was, closing the distance with a calm that Jack couldn't fully understand. Then, as the bear came within a few feet of him, something utterly unexpected happened. The creature stopped. Its massive form was so close now that Jack could feel the heat radiating from its body, the soft rise and fall of its chest with each breath. For a brief moment, their eyes met again, and Jack saw something that made his breath catch a softness. The same fierce eyes that had looked at him with such power, just moments before now, seemed filled with something else, curiosity, perhaps, or even a hint of trust. The bear's body language was no longer threatening, it was simply presence. As the hiker stood there, fighting the urge to flee, something remarkable happened. The fear, which had held him in a vice-like grip moments earlier, began to melt away. The wild, which had once seemed so untamable, suddenly felt like something he could understand. In this moment, the barrier between human and animal seemed to dissolve just a little. In that moment, the world fades away. The fear melts, replaced by something softer, a quiet understanding. Could this be the beginning of something beautiful? Jack's body remained rigid, but his mind was a swirl of thoughts and emotions. The bear was so close now that he could smell the earth and pine that clung to its fur. He watched as it lowered its head slightly, sniffing the air once more, as though taking in Jack's scent. It wasn't a challenge. It wasn't a threat. There was no growl, no flash of sharp claws or teeth, just an unspoken communication between two creatures from worlds apart. Then, in a soft, almost hesitant movement, the bear did something Jack could have never imagined. It gently nudged a fallen branch with its snout, pushing it toward the hiker, as if offering a gift. The branch, simple and unremarkable, lay there between them, a small, quiet gesture. Jack blinked in disbelief. The bear, a creature of immense strength and power, was offering something to him, an innocent, almost childlike gesture. Can you see it? The bear, a creature of immense strength, offering a simple gift, a moment of peace in a world so full of chaos. In a forest where life and death often collide, this tender moment stood in stark contrast, a reminder that kindness and connection can come from the most unexpected places. Jack's heart softened as the bear stood there, its gaze unwavering but not threatening. The wind, which had stopped earlier in suspense, now began to stir again, the trees swaying gently in the breeze. The forest, too, seemed to breathe again. He looked down at the branch, then back at the bear, whose eyes seemed to hold a kind of quiet wisdom. For a fleeting moment, Jack wondered if the bear somehow understood the significance of what had just happened. It was as though the animal was telling him that there was more to the wild than mere survival. There was also beauty, tenderness, and the possibility of understanding, even between the most unlikely of companions. As the hiker slowly reached down and picked up the branch, he felt something shift within him. What was once fear had now transformed into something far more profound, a deep respect for the bear, for the wild, and for the unexpected moments of connection that could arise in the most unlikely places. Jack had come into the forest searching for solitude, but what he had found was something far more powerful, a moment of peace, a silent exchange between two creatures that spoke volumes without uttering a word. And as the bear finally turned and lumbered back into the woods, Jack knew one thing for sure: this encounter, this unexpected twist, would stay with him forever. He wasn't just leaving the forest with a story to tell, he was leaving with a deeper understanding of the world and the creatures that inhabit it. The wild was not just a place of danger, it was a place of connection, where even the most unexpected moments could change everything. The serenity of the moment, once so fragile and delicate, was suddenly shattered as the hiker's foot slipped on the rocky path. His ankle twisted awkwardly beneath him, sending a sharp wave of pain through his body. His breath hitched, and he instinctively grabbed for the ground, trying to steady himself, but it was no use. The rocks beneath him were slick with moisture, and the sharp sting of pain in his ankle was enough to make him gasp aloud. Panic surged through his chest. For a brief, frantic moment, Jack thought he might fall, or worse, be unable to move. His mind raced. He needed to get up. He needed to find help. But in the silence of the wilderness, alone with a twisted ankle, the weight of isolation sank in. There was no one around, and the only sounds he could hear were the rustling of the trees and the far-off calls of birds. But then, through the haze of his pain and panic, Jack heard something that stopped him in his tracks. A soft sound, the padding of paws against earth. He looked up, eyes widening in disbelief, and found himself face to face with the bear once more. The creature, who'd been a distant presence just moments ago, was now standing directly beside him. It wasn't just observing this time, it was there, its massive form a protective shield between him and the rocky path ahead. Jack froze, his heart pounding with confusion and awe. The bear, a wild creature that should have been a threat, was standing guard, its large, dark eyes fixed on him with an intensity that was almost comforting, and in that moment, it wasn't just a fearsome predator, it was something else entirely, something Jack never expected. The hiker looks up surprised. The bear is not just watching, it's guarding. In the wild, these creatures are solitary, yet here it is, acting like a protector. What had he done to deserve such protection from a wild animal? It was something so far beyond his understanding, beyond anything he could have prepared for. The bear's massive body was positioned in a way that blocked the hiker from continuing down the path, its stance unwavering. Its head turned slightly, scanning the surrounding forest, its eyes alert to any potential threats. The bear was on high alert, not because of Jack, but because it sensed something that was off. The hiker's vulnerability, the danger of being alone and injured in the wilderness, had triggered something deep inside the creature. The wild was no longer simply a place of danger, it had become a place of guardianship, of silent protection. Jack's breath slowed as he watched the bear, his mind struggling to grasp the enormity of what was happening. The creature had come to his side, without hesitation, without a growl or snarl, but with a quiet determination. Jack's pain was still sharp, but the fear that had gripped him only moments before had begun to fade, replaced by an overwhelming sense of gratitude. The bear didn't move closer, but it didn't leave either. It stood between Jack and the path ahead, its powerful form a shield against any danger that might lurk in the forest. The hiker could sense the animal's strength, its deep, innate connection to the wild. There was no fear in the bear's eyes, only a quiet resolve, a natural instinct to protect. In the midst of the chaos and confusion of his injury, Jack found himself looking at the bear with something unexpected awe. The hiker's heart swells, not with fear, but with a strange awe. In the wild, there are no guarantees, no promises of safety. The wilderness was harsh, unforgiving. There was no one around to offer comfort or help. And yet here, in the middle of it all, the bear stood as if to say, "I will keep watch over you." And in that moment, Jack realized that the bear was offering something he had never expected. A sense of security, a quiet assurance that no harm would come to him. Jack tried to steady himself, carefully reaching for a nearby tree, to pull himself up. The pain in his ankle shot through him again, but he fought to remain calm, trying to ignore the overwhelming sting. The bear, sensing his movement, shifted slightly, its eyes never leaving him, as though it were ready to intervene if needed. There was something deeply human about the bear's gaze now, as though it understood that Jack was struggling not just physically, but emotionally as well. Jack managed to stand, testing his weight on the injured foot, but the pain was still too intense to bear. He sat back down carefully, his eyes never leaving the bear. The creature's vigilance remained unwavering. It wasn't moving closer, but it wasn't leaving either. It stayed with him, a silent protector in the wild, offering no words, no promises, just its presence. In the stillness of the forest, time seemed to slow. Jack's mind quieted, and he realized that he wasn't alone. The wild, which had once felt intimidating and foreign, now seemed to be offering something different, a connection, a bond, however brief it may be. The bear wasn't just an animal, it was a reminder that, even in the harshest of places, there was kindness to be found. And as Jack sat there, waiting for the pain to subside, he realized that the bond between him and the bear was something sacred, something unexpected. It wasn't a bond built on fear or survival, but on a deep instinctual understanding that sometimes even the wildest creatures had something to offer. And in this moment, the bear had given Jack something he would never forget, a quiet, unspoken promise of protection in a place where survival was the only law. As the minutes passed and Jack's breathing steadied, he began to feel a renewed sense of hope. He wasn't sure how he would make it out of the forest, but with the bear standing by, he felt that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't as alone as he had thought. The wild had shown him something profound, that even in the most unexpected places, protection and kindness could emerge, offering a chance for survival, for healing, and for connection. The minutes passed in quiet stillness, the weight of the bear's presence still hanging in the air, like a warm memory. Jack's breath slowed, and his mind, which had been racing in panic, now felt clearer. His pain, while still sharp, was beginning to dull as he gathered his strength. He knew the bear was still there, standing just beyond the reach of his vision, but as time passed, he began to sense that it was ready to leave. Then, without a sound, the bear began to move. Its massive form shifted, its heavy paws padding softly on the forest floor. Jack watched as the creature walked away slowly, deliberately. The bear's gaze lingered for a brief moment, a final look, a shared moment of understanding, and then, just like that, the bear turned and disappeared into the depths of the forest. The stillness returned, and for a moment, Jack could hardly believe what had just happened. The bear had left, but it had given him so much more than he could have imagined. It had given him the space to breathe, the strength to endure, and the reminder that there is kindness, even in the wildest of places. The forest, once so unfamiliar and intimidating, now felt different. It was no longer a place of fear. It was a place of life, of compassion, and of quiet wonder. The bear retreats into the forest, its massive form disappearing into the shadows. And the hiker? They leave with more than just memories. They leave with a reminder that kindness and protection can come from the most unexpected places. Jack, now able to stand, carefully tested his injured ankle. It still throbbed, but he could move, albeit slowly. With each step, his confidence grew. He limped back toward the trail, his mind racing, not with thoughts of fear or pain, but with the memory of the bear's unwavering protection. The wilderness was still wild, but in that wildness, something beautiful had unfolded, something that would stay with him forever. As he continued his journey, the landscape around him seemed different. The trees, the breeze, the rustling of leaves, they all felt alive in a new way, as if the world itself was part of a story that was still unfolding. Jack knew he would never forget this encounter. It had changed something deep within him. The forest, which once felt intimidating and overwhelming, now felt like a place filled with possibilities, filled with life and unexpected kindness. He had learned something profound about the wild and about himself. What would you do if you were given a second chance at trust? At kindness? The forest may be wild, but it is full of stories. And in that wild, something beautiful happened. Jack paused for a moment, standing still as he took in the surroundings. He remembered the bear, its gaze, its calmness, its quiet presence, and he smiled softly to himself. There had been no words between them, no promises made. But in that brief, sacred moment, Jack had learned that trust and kindness could be found in the most unlikely places. The wild wasn't just a place of survival. It was a place where connections could form, where something beautiful could emerge from the most unexpected of circumstances. And as Jack continued down the path, a quiet sense of peace settled over him. The encounter with the bear had left an indelible mark on his heart, reminding him of the power of compassion. It was a lesson that transcended the boundaries of the wild and reached into the very core of humanity. Sometimes, what seems impossible is only the beginning of something far greater. If we learn anything from the bear today, it's that trust and kindness can bridge any gap, even between humans and the wild. Jack's journey was far from over. The forest stretched out before him, full of untold stories and lessons yet to be learned. But he would walk with a new understanding now, a deeper appreciation for the creatures who roamed this land, for the wild that had given him so much more than survival. It had given him a glimpse of what it meant to truly live, to experience compassion, and to understand that, no matter where you are, no matter how wild the world may seem, there is always room for kindness. With every step he took, Jack knew he would carry the memory of the bear with him, a reminder that even in the most unexpected of encounters, there is always something to be learned, something beautiful, something life-changing. As Jack's footsteps grew softer on the path, his thoughts lingered on the lesson the bear had imparted. He knew deep down that he'd never be the same. The encounter had touched something deep within him, something that went beyond the physical, beyond the pain in his ankle. It had reminded him of a simple truth: compassion, whether from a creature of the wild or a human, has the power to change lives. Jack's heart swelled with gratitude. The wild, so often feared, had shown him something extraordinary. A bear, a creature that most would consider a threat, had offered protection, care, and kindness without asking for anything in return. It was a reminder that compassion isn't bound by species, by expectations, or by circumstances. Sometimes, kindness comes from the most unexpected places. So, next time you find yourself in the wild, whether that's out in nature or in the chaos of life, remember the bear. Remember that kindness knows no boundaries, and sometimes the greatest things happen when we least expect them. In our busy, fast-paced lives, it's easy to overlook the moments when someone, whether human or animal, reaches out with compassion. But the bear taught us that these moments are precious, even life-changing. When we open ourselves to kindness, when we give and receive with a heart full of trust, we create a ripple effect that has the power to transform the world around us. Jack didn't need to search for meaning anymore. It had been given to him in a simple act of care from a wild creature. Now it was his turn to carry that lesson forward, to be kinder, to trust more, and to recognize the moments of connection that can make even the darkest paths brighter. So, the next time you find yourself in a place of fear or uncertainty, remember that sometimes the greatest act of courage is not in fighting the storm, but in embracing the unexpected moments of kindness that come our way. Just like the bear, you too have the power to change lives, starting with your own. Before you go, we'd love for you to be part of this community. Subscribe to our channel to hear more stories that touch the heart, inspire change, and remind us all of the beauty in the world around us. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and comment. Let us know what you think and how moments like these have touched your life. And, of course, hit the notification bell so you never miss a story that might change the way you see the world. Let's keep spreading kindness and compassion, one story at a time. Thanks for being with us, and we'll see you in the next video.